Thank you for remembering that. I appreciate it. But I was watching, just passing by on cable, mind you. In fact, we ought to turn that off. No, I'm joking. I was watching Ancient Aliens.
That is awesome.
It's crazy. Yeah. Ancient Aliens. And this one guy used may, every third word. This may be a landing pad for the ancient aliens out in the Tiscasca lines or whatever.
But you saw that. That's crazy, isn't it? You can't deny this.
Can't deny there's lines out in the desert. That's
I saw that first time I was geeking for like a week.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how these lines are up there. But may is every third word on Ancient Aliens. This may be this may be that. That's a good way to cover your bet when you're not actually sure about a claim that you make. So last time we left off talking about what we refer to as downplayers. Downplayers are phrases, words that attempt to undermine the significance of what somebody's done, their expertise, something like that. And so we will call somebody a so-called doctor. A so-called doctor. That's kind of undermining the idea that they're a doctor. Or we'll say that they merely have a master's degree, or the degree is merely from, Phoenix University or something like that. So here the phrases, or even quotation marks, she got her degree from the University of Phoenix. This is going to undermine the significance of the accomplishment. And these are different words that are intended to undermine that significance. Now, once again, bigger picture here. What we're learning about is how we use rhetoric to persuade people to think something is the case. And this persuasive force of the words are completely independent of the logical force of the argument. Has nothing to do with the validity of the argument, the soundness of the argument, or the strength of the inductive argument. We're just using words that make somebody look bad. So we need to be conscious when somebody else is making an argument that they're not using a bunch of downplayers and other rhetorical devices that make us think that something is true when the argument does not lead us to that conclusion. I think I just did it right there. A horse laugh. When someone simply laughs at a claim, undercuts the seriousness of a claim. Now, that can I don't have a picture about horse laugh. I should have a picture. You might run into this on cable news. And particularly when, like on CNN, they'll put two people debating an issue, and you'll have both of their pictures up at the same time. And you can get into danger when that happens. But often one reply will be, one guy makes an argument and the other guy begins by, ha ha ha, you're kidding me. So you think that Obama can get the jobs bill passed? That's a good one. Did I make an argument there?
Yeah.
No, I didn't make an argument. I kind of suggested a conclusion that Obama would not be successful. But the fact that I can laugh as I do it is not an argument. It's just a conscious way of making the other side look bad. But you do run into that quite a bit, quite frankly. Undercuts the seriousness of a claim. Hyperbole. It is an extravagant overstatement. I believe Hank Williams can define hyperbole for you. Why was that a joke that bombed?
Because, he's the one that compared Obama to Hitler.
Correct. He compared Obama to Hitler. And as a result, they didn't play. All my rowdy friends are coming over tonight to open Monday Night Football. Interesting to see if he'll be back next week. I suspect I think he responded correctly.
Everyone said a lot of crazy stuff about Bush, and I guess that was okay because he kind of was a bad guy. But Obama, I think, is a bad guy too. So I don't know why it was okay to say all that stuff about Bush. Now it's not okay to say about Obama. Now you can say anything about Bush. Make any cracks at him.
At the end, you're absolutely right. You can get away with anything. Even the Republicans were called.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Good point. You had a comment? No.
Did you say Obama is a bad guy?
What's that?
I heard like he said Obama is a bad guy. I don't think he is.
He compared Obama to Hitler, and he was talking about when Boehner and the congressional leaders were playing golf together, and he said Boehner playing golf with Obama is like Hitler playing golf with Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. And so the comparison of our president with Hitler rubbed some people wrong.
Maybe he was talking about Boehner.
Good point. I don't think
And
so.
Obama's Netanyahu.
Yeah. But Thon's point's well taken. Near the end of the Bush administration, it was pretty much anything goes with Bush. And his approval rating was really low, so everybody's taking pot shots at him near the end.
Could be, but I think arguably the Obama administration has a much better human rights record than the Bush administration.
Well, here we're not talking about what's actually the case. We're really just talking about the things people say.
Right.
And now I will.
But in either case, fascism is an overstatement.
Yeah, and but I will say some of the claims that they've made on Fox before were kind of over the line. Like the president doesn't like white people and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
That that was.
As in, that's a good one,
What was it?
Was that?
No, I just didn't know, so I was wondering why.
Oh, there's plenty of reasons.
Yeah, there's plenty of reasons.
Yeah,
I think he's just.
Let me list the ways.
No, but he made a comment about human rights, and then he made it so.
Good point. Good point. Good point. But both of you make a good point. It is a free country, I think. And now here's the thing: Hank Williams is free to say whatever he wants, but ESPN is free to select whoever they want to do the opening for their TV show.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what you could, how you could explain this. But I do think it would qualify perhaps as hyperbole a bit.
But you do have, like, I guess, a line where you cross where it's like acceptable free speech, and like Bill O'Reilly saying like Michelle Obama should be lynched. It was hate speech, I think that at their worst, the more left-leaning pundits still maintained a sense of integrity, that it was a line that couldn't be obeyed by Fox.
I think maybe he was just trying to make a pretty, pretty big comparison, like a Nazi and a Jew, or a devil and an angel. It was something like that. I think it was trying to,
I think like you.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that, Kaylin, but I think reality is it's a big world, and there are people on both sides that, like we have the Earth Liberation Front, the ELF. Many think they crossed the line when they started burning buildings, and so I would see a difference maybe between most of what goes on MSNBC and what goes on in Fox, perhaps.
That's what I was referring to,
Yeah.
the news media.
But there are people on the left that ignore that line too. And now you don't see a lot of them down on Wall Street these days. Those guys seem pretty calm, and they're not carrying weapons and stuff like that. I don't think. Is anybody? No. Yeah. Except they might be carrying their own mace from now on. These cops are getting on them pretty good. In any case, here, hyperbole is the use of an extravagant overstatement. My parents are fascists. They enforce a midnight curfew. Well, my goodness. Enforcing a midnight curfew equals fascism. Big, broad jump there. And when we use this, often we're intended to undermine the target of our ridicule. For example, the Secretary of State is less well informed than a beat. Well, by saying something extreme like that, you're trying to make the Secretary of State look bad, obviously. Now, many people are probably going to acknowledge the fact that she cannot be less well informed than a beat, but they will be influenced to have a less positive picture of the Secretary of State if your use of this hyperbole is successful. And so they can have a slanting effect where they lead the audience to be less accepting of your opponent's views. Even if you do not agree with the hyperbole, it can lead you closer to the position advocated by the speaker without evidence. Without evidence. So, you know, the idea is Hank is going to encourage more people to be have a negative attitude of the president by associating the president with Hitler. This is a play on that one Batman where that guy played the Joker. And so you're casting the president as a socialist killer. Yeah, that's the way.
And
God bless America.
And sometimes there are killers who claim these to non-killers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a lot of hyperbole going on in our country, perhaps. And to talk about this, the importance of our political dialogue, we do remember that Gabriella Giffords was shot in Arizona, and this was at a time when a lot of people were very concerned about the vocabulary and the discourse of people in politics. Specifically, we had representatives, talking about, violence as a use, and here's where we get to the Second Amendment. Some were saying that if you don't achieve certain political ends, then arming yourself is a way to address them. And you had Sharon Engel running for Senate in Arizona, I believe. Nevada or Arizona, anybody remember? Anyway, while that kind of terminology is out there, you have Sarah Palin putting targets on things, on posters, and people were a little uncomfortable with the kind of violent nature of the rhetoric. Much of it was hyperbole. I don't know what was coming out of Sharon Engel's mouth, but for a lot of people, that's dangerous, because you might think the discussion's extreme and, I'm not really listening to it, but there are people who do. And it could, in fact, influence people to address political issues in a way that's not as constructive. And so I think when we use hyperbole and particularly violent language in a political discussion, that can be dangerous, because one of the great achievements of our country is that we resolve our issues democratically, and the tanks do not roll down the streets in order to have a change of power. It's just votes, it's just votes. And for many, that's a really cool thing. So that would be a danger of hyperbole. When you get these extravagant overstatements, if they're violent in their nature, it can lead the discourse to be unproductive to a degree. Now, this is something to watch out for in analyzing arguments. Often people will make it seem like they have consulted sources, or they have evidence for a claim. But on the Senate floor, senators will make claims that just are not true whatsoever. For example, does anybody remember the senator named Kyle? And he made this claim on the floor of the Senate about health, whatever those places where women go to have health issues addressed, and he claimed that like 90% of what they do are abortions. And the fact was that it was only like 4%. And Stephen Colbert made such a big deal about it because when newspapers contacted Senator Kyle, was his name, his office, to check up on this claim he made on the Senate floor, 90%, the facts say that it's only 3%. And really, women get pap smears and other stuff when they go to these clinics. And his office said that Senator Kyle was not attempting to make a factual statement on the floor of the Senate. So Stephen Colbert did this whole thing on Twitter where this is not intended to be a factual statement. It was the hashtag. and all these people were saying things about John Kyle that were knowingly not true, but they would just give it that hashtag. Like Senator John Kyle violently beats puppies. You know, just, this is not intended to be a factual statement. All kinds of things. John Kyle flagrantly rebroadcasts National Football League games without the express written consent of the NFL. That was a funny one. Anyway, but they kind of make fun of the fact that this guy is just saying stuff that's not intended to be true. Well, often in arguments, you'll have claims made, and people will say things like, "Oh, the sources say," or "the studies show." Well, if they don't footnote the sources and provide you clear information about the studies, then you need to consider these what we call proof surrogates. That's, instead of proof, we're just going to use this phrase, and it'll make you think that we consulted some studies. Sources say, studies show. Here's an example. Canadians turned out en masse to reject the referendum. There's every reason to believe that voters in the U.S. are just as fed up with social engineering that lumps people together as groups rather than treating them as individuals. Where is the proof surrogate in that statement?
There's every reason.
Exactly. If they don't cite a footnote, we have no reason. You know, this is just an excuse for proof. They're giving you a phrase instead.
Canadians turned out in mass is like, you know, the population of one American city.
Not a big deal. Every reason to believe would be the proof surrogate there. So when you see phrases like this, they're being used in the absence of proof. Sloppy research, definitely. Now, we talked about this before. Rhetorical definitions are something we talked about before. Rhetorical analogies are quite similar. Rhetorical analogies are a comparison of two things in order to make one look better or worse than it might be. Comparing the president with Hitler, for example, would try to make the president look bad. Comparing Social Security to a Ponzi scheme, I think that was Rick Perry, that is intended to make Social Security look bad, obviously. And in these analogies, we need to be careful, make sure that important information is not missing and that the same standard of comparison is used. You know, we're out of time, so why don't we pick it up here next time after you have a great weekend. Have a good one. What's that?
Return the homework.
Yeah.